History was made just before the regular season ended for the Montreal Canadiens due to injuries and obviously some salary cap constraints as well with the way the lineups are set. The Montreal Canadiens played a game for the first time in over a century without a Quebec-born francophone player in their lineup. People got upset. There were think pieces written and takes thrown around on social media. People talked about it. And I guess we're going to talk about it here. How important is it for the Montreal Canadiens to have Quebec francophones in their lineup?
I think if you look around any sports league or any sports team, you want to have the players that grew up in that area who idolize this team on your roster. It's a great marketing tool. It's also a great sort of reward for this player who grew up watching this team and is now in that lineup. But I don't think it's any fault really that the Canadiens haven't been able to attract star francophone players here in this market, and that's something that they have to evaluate. I also don't necessarily think it's fair that politicians who don't follow the Montreal Canadiens decide to jump in then and share their opinions on it. But I think the other thing too is the Canadiens have to make more of a connection with the where they're playing at the moment. We've been talking about getting people out there to get vaccinated. The Montreal Canadiens are the biggest stars in the town, and none of them, I know they have been busy playing hockey, but you don't really hear their support to say, guys, go out there and get vaccinated. You don't really see a connection between the players and the community as well. So I think a lot of people are thinking if you're from this area, will help drive a connection between the two of them. But it was really just circumstances that led to this. And I think it's just a matter of finding a way why the local players don't want to come and play here.
I think it's very important the Canadiens have francophone players on the team. Fans out there say, we just want to win. We don't care. When you look back at 93 or 86 when the Canadiens won the Cup, there were a lot of French players on those teams, a lot. 93, half the team, plus the coach. I think the bigger problem here is with Hockey Quebec. Like, why isn't Hockey Quebec developing more francophone players who can play in the NHL? You look around the NHL, there's not a lot of French players in the NHL now. And I think that has to do with the development system here in Quebec. For the Canadiens, they've taken a lot of heat over this. I know Trevor Timmins, their assistant GM and head coach, got very upset last year at the draft when he was questioned again for not selecting any francophones. And he talked about how his wife's a francophone. It's important. Like they want to have French players on the team, but they're not going to draft a guy just because he's French. So the talent, the francophone talent out there isn't what it used to be, including goalies. That Patrick Roy thing has worn off, where you used to have all the best goalies in the NHL were francophones. But I think the population in Quebec, the francophone population in Quebec, and especially outside of Montreal, this team is more than a hockey team to them. It's a religion, it's a passion, and they want to feel that they're represented on that team. They want to look at that team and see guys who are like them, who understand the CH, who are part of the community. And not just for the francophone players, these players aren't part of the community anymore, as just mentioned. I think the only two guys who live here year-round are Drouin and Byron. These guys, the season's over, they pack up their bags and they're gone, and you never see them again until the next season starts. Back in the day, and Rick, I'm sure, took part in this too, they used to have a softball team that would travel around Quebec and play games and mingle with the fans and communicate with the fans. So I think it's really important that the Canadiens do keep that local content on the team. But it's becoming much more difficult for them just because there aren't that many francophone players out there anymore.
And look, records are made to be broken. Things have changed. The bottom line is, no matter what your mother tongue or language is, you want to put the best players available on your roster that's going to allow you a chance to win. And, I think that is an area that should be the priority. And yes, it would be nice to have your French-Canadian content, but if there's another player that is better than him, it's no slight against the French-Canadian athlete. It's just, the bottom line is finding the best player, finding a winning combination. And, as far as the language situation goes, I remember in '89 with Pat Burns, there was an issue that was brought up where Pat Burns was supposedly having problems with the French-Canadian kids, if you can believe it. And, it was a discussion that was going on, and it was just like, that was the farthest thing from the truth that we had any type of bad situation in the dressing room or outside the dressing room where you had the French and English guys, apart from each other. And, that obviously was put to rest pretty quickly as we, continued to win. But it was still in the mindset of a number of people that, this language issue was a part of that particular year. But it's been around for a long time. I think the Montreal Canadiens fan base is one of the best in the world, and they want to have results, and they want to have a winning team that they can, associate with and feel good about, and that's what it's all about. And I think that should be the priority in finding a way to put the best team out there, and the fans will be entertained, and they'll be much happier at the end when they see, a Stanley Cup final versus just getting in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think for a marketing standpoint, as Jess kind of brought up earlier, like it totally makes sense to have Quebec-born players on the Montreal Canadiens, and it's good for the fans for them to be able to see guys that look like them or whatever to be here. But I do question how much that pushes towards, say like an Anglophone-born Quebecois player getting that same treatment here. Say like the Montreal Canadiens go out and get Alex Killorn, for example. Are people going to look at him the same way? Probably not, because he's not necessarily seen as a francophone, right? I'm also annoyed at the fact that this became a story off of the fact that, Jonathan Drouin not available to play and Philip Deneau at one point not being available to play. This was not because the Montreal Canadiens decided all of a sudden they were going to stop caring about putting French players in their lineup and not have anyone at all, or Alex Belzile for some reason not available to them. No one's also bringing up the fact that there are a bunch of Quebecois players playing with the Laval Rocket right now. Like all of a sudden, because two guys, or the two most prominent Quebec players in their organization, can't play due to injury and other reasons. Now all of a sudden we're going to bring up this issue. You know what they say about how this part of the year between the trade deadline and the playoffs is just kind of like a dead zone for stories. I think people got a little bit advantageous of that and decided we were going to kick that up and make that a story, because I don't really think that's necessarily should have been the case. Like, it's very clear the Canadiens care about, where their stand is in this province with regards to francophone people. And they understand how important it is to see French faces in the lineup. So I don't know why all these think pieces and all these other discussions had to happen. That being said, it did start some interesting discussions, I guess, but I think it is ultimately a whole lot of nothing. At the end of the day, you need the best players on the ice who are going to get you to win. It is cool to see a Philip Deneau or a Jonathan Drouin play in the lineup for the Garde de Chez Nous kind of, theme with this team. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know, you got to put together the best team to win. I will say, though, I bet it might be a bit annoying to be a fan here and see like a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning seem to get it right with French Canadian players like all the time. Like when you tweet about, like, I tweet about like Alex Barré-Boulet, who was like playing in the queue for like how many years, then the Lightning get him, and people are like, oh wow, like the Canadiens couldn't even get that guy. He scored all those goals in the queue. Anthony Beauvillier, who I think was drafted in the same draft class as Noah Juleson a few years ago. He's turned himself into a decent player with the New York Islanders. That's a Quebecois-born player, and a couple of guys are like, oh, well, why can't we get those guys? I think there's definitely some efforts that need to be kind of shifted when it comes to getting the best talent the Canadiens necessarily, that they need to make sure that they do right. But, aside from marketing, I guess, like, I don't think it necessarily should be seen as a prerequisite. But I think we've exhausted this topic enough. But unless you wanted to add something.
That's part of the story, though, Julian, the fact they have missed out on kids in their backyards, which really shouldn't happen. Some of those are drafted before the Canadiens even had a chance to pick, which nothing you can do about that. But they have missed out on guys in their backyard. And to me, it is a big story just because this team is over 100 years old, and it was the first time ever they played a game without any francophones on the roster.
And it's all about timing also, right? The draft year, certain French Canadians seem to be available at a given time. Then, bang, there you go. You get a real good player in that particular draft year. So there is a cycle involved, there is a timing involved, and there's a lot of other things that come into the picture. But like I said, you just got to find the best player to suit your hockey club.
How important is it for the Canadiens to have Quebec Francophone players in their lineup? You, watching this video, let us know in the comments section below. and visit hockeyinsideout.com to check out our full episode.